What a way to end a Monday, huh?
Thank you.
He's on his way.
Oh.
Apparently she likes stars.
More yard signs after I got yours.
You what?
I collected the extra yard signs after I got yours.
Did you? All right, I'm calling to order this meeting of the Altoona Government Study Commission for Monday, November 4th. The time is 7 p.m. The meeting will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Aye.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Duncan?
Here.
Ms. Echols? Here. Mr. Clarence? Ms. Green? Here. Mr. Cook? Vice Chairman Fiore?
Here.
Chairman Hill?
Here. Next on the agenda is the time for public comment. Anybody wishing to comment on any of the agenda items, this is your opportunity. I would note that we'll probably have a minor addition to the agenda to discuss future meeting planning. Other than that, the agenda stands to my knowledge. Any public comment?
I got my monthly issue of CFO magazine. I used to be in risk management. And there's a whole bunch of good articles about all the cities that are in trouble this month. So if anybody gets CFO, or pull it up on me, I gotta give it, you can take a look at it. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, then we will move on to adoption of the October 22 meeting minutes. They were circulated electronically earlier today for review. I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Thank you, David. Any discussion? All in favor, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. It is our great honor. Are you still vice mayor?
No.
Yeah. Former vice mayor, current councilman. You've been on for 12 years?
It only seems like a lifetime.
Has it been that long?
Yeah, it's been 12
Well,
years.
Councilman Bruce Kelly is with us for his comments regarding the work of the commission and his recommendations or thoughts on our direction. So first we'll just turn it over to you and then.
Well, really, I see them down here under interviews, and I really wanted to just kind of show up tonight. My real purpose was to thank them for your efforts. I know the kind of time you put in, and I know the kind of pay you're drawing for these positions, but I certainly appreciate the efforts and hard work. But I now, of recent, I have particularly enjoyed some of the comments in the paper from the chairman and the subsequent Altoona Mirror editorials, which frankly I think are real spot on, but that's probably all a different conversation than some of what you've been dealing with. But there is a lot of validity to those statements. And I know Wayne was quoted as saying, you know, having to take time from his work. And when someone like Wayne takes time from his work, that's billables that aren't being generated and revenue that's not being made for his company. And I know myself and others, when we do things with the League of Municipalities, and whether it's attending a conference or whether we go to Harrisburg for try to lobby, I mean, that's vacation time I have to take from my job, and that's time I'm not getting to spend with my family because I have to take vacation time to do that. And we are at a disadvantage to those cities, and I always prefer to say cities of the third class. I don't like third class cities. That never sounded good to me. But cities of the third class, where they have a strong mayor, and they have a much better seat at the table than we do in Harrisburg particularly, and also in Washington. We have that kind of, we're at the kids' table at Thanksgiving dinner. And I think that, you know, and I'm trying to think in the history of the city if we ever had a strong mayor form of government. I mean, I know we had commission form, and that probably dates back to when the third-class city code was last updated, and before that, I'm not sure what we had before that. We are different in that we set out and established a very safe, conservative form of government. I mean, it is definitely suspenders and a belt at the same time. And it's very stable. It's a very stabilizing form of government. But, you're not going to do anything really crazy and go off the cliff, but you're not going to necessarily go out and do things that are really super innovative, because either you have a part-time council that doesn't necessarily have the time or the ability or want to take that kind of risk, and you're not going to get a full-time staff person who's going to want to set their whole career, either for, he or she is going to set their whole career on making something that's a real dicey situation. So, but I've enjoyed those comments by Wayne and the Altoona Mirrors follow-up editorials. I mean, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you folks may have for me. I understand that you've had some difficulty in trying to get other people from other communities to share with you. If I can be of help with any of that, I serve on the legislative committee for the Pennsylvania League of Municipalities, and I might be able to if you still have time for that at this point, this late in the year, I might be able to get some folks that would be able to participate and help you with that, if that's still some interest to you. But really, my main purpose in coming tonight, and Linda asked me if I could be on the agenda, then was to really just thank all of you for all that you're doing and the hard work you're putting in. And I'm glad to see Bob Kutz on this, because I think Bob brings that knowledge from the last government study commission with him, and I was glad to see him as well as all of you get selected for this. I think it's pretty significant, and we're going to look to be making some changes in our community that are going to be long-lasting and have some real significant impact. And I think one of the key things we'll have to do is try to educate the public on what these changes will mean. Because home rule in and of itself is not necessarily a panacea. And depending on how if we set this up and go that route, what we put in that and how we want to structure that, and then trying to get the public to understand that. That's really my 2 cents for the evening. I'd be happy to entertain any questions that any of you may have. Mr. Duncan.
May I call you Bruce?
You may call me anything you would like. Generally, everyone does.
You're an elected politician, so I'm going to assume you have the pulse of the community. What do you hear about home rule?
I don't know that people understand it. I mean, and I think I just don't know that people get what that can mean. We'll go home rule and that'll solve our problems. Well, that also might mean that we deviate from third-class city code. We allow ourselves to have different revenue sources, and that means that we raise taxes.
Are you an advocate, or are you in support of home rule?
I think it would. There's a lot of problems I see with third-class city code, and it's just. I mean, they're making some changes now for the first time in years, but a lot of it is cleaning some of the language up. I think it would give us some more tools in the toolbox to address some of our problems. I've always said, though, from day one, I like to take a step back and look at how we provide municipal services in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and I still think that that's the bigger problem. And that's not something that we're going to be able to address here. That's a problem that has to be addressed in Harrisburg, the fact that we have so many layers of government and all these local municipalities all trying to provide a lot of the same services. And I think there's some real cost inefficiencies in that. And then I look at businesses trying to do business in the state. I look at someone like Bentham and her organization and have to deal with all these municipalities. I mean, it's really cumbersome in this state. And I think it's hard to do business. I think it adds to the cost of local government. And really, that's, to me, where I see a real long-term solution, because, we'll fix certain problems. No matter what we do, we'll fix certain problems. We'll come up with some solutions. But as long as our population continues to dwindle, and as long as our demographics shift the way they've been shifting, you can only get blood from the stone for so long. I mean, you run out of people who can pay the bills. And
How do you view Act 47 in relationship to home rule?
how do I view Act 47 in relationship to home rule? It may get us out of Act 47 by allowing us to pursue other revenues that we don't have access to now. But again, that's, when you say we're going to talk about other revenues, that's a nice way of saying we're going to have to raise taxes on the people that, live or work here. So, now, having said that, we can't do that under the current third-class city code, the way things are. And you have home rule communities that are in Act 40. Reading is a home rule community, and they're in Act 47. So it's not necessarily, it gives you more options, certainly, but not necessarily going to solve all your problems. So.
Any other questions for Bruce? Or?
From your statement, I assume that you're in favor of a stronger mayor, if not a strong mayor situation. Could you elaborate on, with your experience as a councilman, where you think those limitations should be placed if we would choose to go that direction?
Well, I have to go back historically and look at what the last, and I don't know if it was a matter of the times when it happened, and I don't want to put Bob on the spot here, but I don't know if the last study commission even looked at strong mayor form of government. But I don't know if because of the dynamics of what was happening in City Hall, we had commission form of government, we had a mayor that was very flamboyant who fired a very popular chief of police. People were extremely upset, and I think if that study commission would have come forward and said, we think strong mayor is the way to go, I think they would have been run out of town had they suggested that, because you have to look at, it's a snapshot of what was going on at the time. And I don't know if they could, I don't know, Bob, again, I'm not really trying to put you on the spot, but I don't know if at the time they thought that given the dynamics in the community that it was something they could even talk about. But
it wasn't at the time.
Yeah.
And actually, when we changed the form of government, it actually shortened the former mayor's term. And we had to have a special election then to elect another mayor,
Right.
who was on the commission at the time.
Right. I think I look back to what was the commission form of government, and I thought that was kind of like very decentralized. You had, the mayor was basically the fifth council person, except the mayor ran the meetings and was in charge of the police department. Other council members were in charge of a certain aspect of city government, which is not strong mayor form of government, where your council then becomes a legislative body per se, and the mayor really becomes your elected chief executive officer. I wish now maybe we would have taken a look at it back then. I think we have great difficulty in attracting people to run for local government. I think part of that is because they sometimes are concerned about, well, if I do this, how much impact am I really going to have on what happens on a day-to-day basis? You have to make a lot of sacrifices, and if you want to try to be effective, we're going to try to get some people down to Harrisburg to lobby for something. Well, we have folks that are taking, vacation days to go down and do that. And we go down there, and everybody knows Gabe Campana, the mayor of Williamsport, and they know Kim Bracey, the mayor of York, which are both cities smaller than us, but they have a strong mayor. And they walk in, and people know them, and we're handing out our business cards and hoping that we'll,
Good stuff.
yeah. So, there is a difference. And, the thing is you're not going to have, no matter who you probably don't want your manager in this form of government down in Harrisburg lobbying, because I don't know how that would go over with the quote-unquote political people who are elected to council. Do we want our manager down there lobbying for us? I don't know. It's, I think you maybe change the dynamics of local politics by doing that. Certainly, I think I would look at Wayne's experience, my experiences, a couple of guys in the back room, Matt, who is, God bless him, running for mayor now. We got to try raising money to run for the. You can't do it. Because everybody just says, well, the manager's in charge of the city. It's so try to run a campaign, and you guys all know what it's like to get those signatures for petition, because you had to get the same number that we get. Am I right? You get twice as many. You had it like
200.
Yeah. So you know how much fun that was. it might be a worthy experiment for us to look at. I really believe that, because I think, and I don't want to paraphrase Wayne's comments too much, but I mean, when you elect that mayor, that strong mayor, he or she becomes the face of local government. They are the definite go-to person, good, bad, or indifferent, and you elect that person for a 4-year term to set the agenda and run things. And they're trying to make things happen. And I think that they're given a lot more, I don't want to say credibility, but they have a nicer seat at the table than we do right now. I mean,
They even know each other.
yeah, I mean, they're involved with the National Conference of Mayors. I mean, there's just some real networking, and they are more in tune with what's going on for with what can happen, and programs and benefits that are available to their community than we are. I mean, we are at a real disadvantage.
So even more so than strong mayor, weak mayor, where that division is, it's the full-time mayor. It's having a full-time position, which usually comes with
But I would say if I had to make my choice, I would probably say I think strong mayor would be better than the commission form. I'm trying to think of who even has commission form left in the state.
Yeah, I think what Richard's saying is that the beauty of home rule is, and part of the problem with this discussion is, you know, when we say strong mayor, everyone looks at the strong mayor system, whereas with home rule, we can craft our own version.
Right.
To avoid the things that some people running around saying the sky is falling.
Well, one thing under third-class city code, and we found this about 30 years ago, is that you can't do a recall in third-class city under third-class city, so you can't do a recall. I don't know if you said a rule you could do a recall or
I
not.
just read some of them do, some of them don't.
Okay, yeah, see,
It's
so-
one of the menu of options that you
Yeah.
can or cannot.
But that's not valid.
It isn't. It's
The
in,
Supreme Court has held it
Okay.
invalid.
Okay, because I just read it in,
Yeah, I know. The
read it,
Constitution, the Supreme Court held that the Constitution of Pennsylvania is the only mechanism for recall. The legislature can't do it, and they tried to do it in the second-class township code. That was held invalid by the courts. You have to follow the Constitution. So.
That's
You know.
Yeah.
You know, but you look at you folks in the business community, and you want to sit down and have you talk to whoever, you know, who do you talk to? We can talk to the mayor if he can get off work, or he or she can get off work, and then you still have to talk to the city manager, and then you got to hope the council is on. I mean, it's. As I said, I think it could be. I think it's certainly worth looking at, and it could be a worthy experiment for us. And I think, given the needs of a city like ours, I think it would be good to have a much larger presence of someone who's really just lobbying for the city in Harrisburg and Washington. And we just don't have that. We do not have that.
Are there any other potential efficiencies that may be dictated by third-class city code that home rule allows the flexibility to maybe restructure or streamline some of the departments within the city that maybe are currently limited or required by third-class city code? And some of these questions are difficult, and the fact that, and we run into this with other interviewees, is that you work within the system you have, familiarity necessarily with the other systems.
You know, one of the things that I've seen, though, through the whole Act 47 process is that when you look at other communities' recovery plans, because we had gone to the type of government we had, there really wasn't a lot of inefficiencies, ineptitude. I mean, there was one city where they talked about that they still had the parking was within the purview of the city, and that the people, they had to fire people because there was money missing, and people. I mean, we just don't have that, and we've done a lot of the steps already that other communities had recommended because of the type of government we had. It became much more streamlined. So, I think from our standpoint, ours becomes one of revenue, and we are really handcuffed by the distinction in Blair County of having the oldest reassessment in the state of Pennsylvania now, you know, which is older than me, and I'm getting to the point where fewer things are starting to be older than me, you know, but, and yeah, you know, trees, yeah. Well, not that I'm broad avenue, right? So I'm broad avenue.
deserve
so,
that.
you know, and I think, you know, we're stuck with that, so we're stuck with the reassessment, and, you know, if the county would have reassessed a couple years ago, we might not all be sitting here tonight, you know? Having said that, that would mean that we would have the ability to raise taxes, and we haven't had the ability to raise taxes. I mean, every year since I've been on council, you know, we do the budget, we go to the county, to the courts, and we ask to have that additional 5 mils, we get that, and that's, you know, that's it. We get some things that we can tinker with when the state gave us the money,
The local services.
local services tax, and, you know, but then we get to nickel and dime everybody. You know, and you know, when you get a bill from the city for like a $10 tax and everything, you start to wonder with the price of postage, is that really the, you know, the most efficient way to go? But we have to, you know, you get a box, and it's that whatever particular Tinker Toy set or Erector set you get, you can only build with what's in the box that they give you. And you know, other states have done things with regard to nonprofits where they charge some type of municipal services fee even to the nonprofits, and it's based on like frontage on a road. And you've got so much frontage, and you still get your streets plowed, you still have police protection, you have fire protection, and based on that, you know, so they lessen the property tax, and they go with that so that everybody's paying. And, you know, you know, as you well know, most of the cities in the state are older. We house the institutional life of the community, whether it's the healthcare facilities that are nonprofit, churches, the arts, you know, all of which are good things. And
I have the list here tonight, Bruce, and it's amazing.
yeah, we're not as bad as some places. I think Clarion, the borough of Clarion, 80% of the borough is off the tax rolls. 80%. And they have no agreement with the university. And let's face it, probably most of the police services that they provide are related somehow to the university. You know, yeah. Well, and there's a distinction of being a college town. You know, I think one of the things about Altoona is I think a lot of times we forget we're really, you know, when you look at the size of Penn State Altoona, we're also a college town. But when you have 80% off the tax rolls because of the university, that's, I mean, how do you do that? You know, and you're providing all the police protection, so you just hope everybody behaves.
So Bruce, you're a local boy made good, and you're, you know,
Jury's still out on that.
local politics.
I'm a local boy, that's.
Yeah. So, are you optimistic about the next 10 years? How do you feel about it?
Am I optimistic about the next 10 years? Yeah, because I think some things will happen. I think we may make some changes based on your recommendations, may give us some more options for revenue, which, you know, and I think at some point that the county is going to run out of thread on their spool, and they're going to be forced to. But look, do I like the property tax? No. All right, but that's what they give us for the bulk of our revenue. And when it hasn't been reassessed since 1958, and when I see everybody who files an appeal, and everybody from Altoona wins the appeal and has their taxes lowered consistently, to me, and I'm not a math whiz, but I think that maybe in Altoona we're paying a disproportionate amount of tax than other people in the county. So I think at some point the county's going to have to reassess. You might get a school district that decides to sue them. And I think, you know, that's always been one of our options. We could sue the county. Well, that's great. We're going to take taxpayer money to sue another taxing body. That's not a real good use of money, I don't think. But you have to look at it also that if it hampers our ability to provide police protection, fire protection to our residents, then I think that we create safety issues, and we have to worry about our people that live here. So I think some of these things will happen, and this will move us out of distress status rather than some of the cities that stay in there forever. But having said that, long term, the state has to come up with some better ways to provide municipal services, and they need to. We're very parochial in this state. I mean, let's face it, we're very parochial in this town. I I mean, everybody talks about what ward they grew up in, you know, and someone lives in the Jones house because the Jones lived there in the 20s. I mean, and I think that's great. And we're all very proud of our roots and that sort of thing. But I've always said that when your house is on fire, you don't necessarily care whose name is on the fire truck, or when you've been robbed, you don't care when the police car. You just want to see the cruiser car out there. You're not necessarily concerned whose name is on it. And when it's snowing, you want to see the plow come down your street. You don't necessarily care whose name is on the plow, even though we're all proud of our local communities. And I think that the state maybe needs to look at how can we reward those communities that are cooperating and expanding their base of services. And, you know, like I said, we're all trying to basically do the same thing. And there's certain things that need to be worked out. But what's the population of the county now? 126,000. 120, and we have 24 municipalities.
24 and a half.
24 and a half, because you have Tunnel Hill Borough, right? And then you have the county government. And you look at the layers of government. And I just think that there's a lot of duplication of effort, and that we could be, you know, working more in concert. And really, that would save some costs and make some more sense. Now, when you're broke, you know, we'll work with anybody. You know, so I don't know that the other municipalities would necessarily paint the same picture that I do, but I think we're very willing to work with the other municipalities and try to share services. Because you just, I go back to looking at our demographics, looking at our population. You have a city with 18% of the population lives below the poverty level. You know, you know, I look at the median family, the median household income in Acton is about $34,000. You know, who pays the bills? You know, so even if you haven't able to raise taxes, what do you do with your ability to pay that? So, so I think we get out of the hole, but unless the state changed the way the game is played somewhere down the road, I think you could be back here again somewhere down the road. Immediate future, looking brighter. Big picture down the road, we need to make some changes. You have, I mean, just look at the pensions, municipal pensions. You have, in Pennsylvania, you have 3,200 municipal pension funds. 25% of all the municipal pensions in the country are in the state of Pennsylvania. I mean, again, I'm not an actuary, I'm not a financial person, but is that efficient? Is that, you know, that seems to be a lot of duplication of services. We have more municipalities than I think there's only one other state that has more municipalities than Pennsylvania. And our population isn't growing this. We keep losing members of Congress. So I think we really need to rethink how we do business, because I think it hurts us. I think it hurts the state. I think people are paying more in taxes than they should for their local services. And I think from a business standpoint, I think we're not competitive. And I think when you want to do business and you have to deal with all these different local municipalities, I think it gets really cost inefficient. So
I just would mind you commenting sort of a follow-up to an earlier question about what to be in touch with the people. The question was asked, what do they think of home rule? What do they think of the services that are being provided? And do they get the fact that the city's going to work?
I think people understand that. I think when you just look at, you know, we just had a homicide, and I think people look at that and they say, are we going to have enough police? Are we going to have enough police to keep our town safe? And as horrendous as that event is, you know, in the whole scheme of things, I mean, we're pretty fortunate where we live, but it wouldn't take much to let the lid off and have things spiral out of control. And I think we need to be ever vigilant in that. So I think people worry about that, and I think if you're able to tell people that we need to raise revenues, and with these revenues, we're going to hire more police and put more cops on the street, I think people would be okay with that. You know, I think they get that we're growth. I mean, I really worry that we're not gonna be able to plow streets. You know, we've already cut back on the number of plow routes. And this happens over and over in communities that end up in Act 47. The Public Works Department really are the folks that end up taking a beat down. And you just, are you able to keep the grass cut? Are you able to maintain public places, parks and that sort of thing? Are you able to keep the streets maintained? And that's a real problem. I mean, I just worry about our ability to even pave streets, and that we're going to end up with a lot of gravel roads because we're, what did our city engineers say? We're on like I looked at some of my colleagues.
45 years.
Once every 25 years to pave a street. Well, that's a long time for that macadam to hold up.
Yeah, we should pave 7, and we get about 3.5 every year.
Yeah, so I think people get that, but I think if we go this route, we're going to have to, whatever we do, if it's going to be about we're doing some things to save the city, to allow us to have better control of our destiny, and it's going to mean that we're going to have to raise additional revenues. I think we need to be able to really explain what the money is going to go for, and then we're going to have not only a plan to raise the revenues, but have some really good leadership talking about this is how we're going to spend the money, and this is why it's important, because we need to keep this city safe. We need to try to keep this city clean. And I think we're doing I see what's going on. I think we do a great job with blight, and we're doing a much better job, and we're doing a good job, but it's probably still not enough, and a lot of people, that's probably still number one complaint. There's just got to keep things moving and keep things positive, and you have to stay ever vigilant. And if it's, taking care of dilapidated houses and paving roads so that they're not all full of potholes, and that just all seems to go hand in hand a lot of times with the crime. The whole broken windows. I mean, you talked about that. You know that as well as anybody. When your town starts to look rough, that's the perception that people get, and that's when people start to look to move out, and that's when bad things start to happen, and good people move out and bad people move in. So, but I think, again, to me, I would say let's try to find some ways that we can have more tools to handle the revenue side of things. And if we're going to raise revenues, we need to be able to clearly say this is what it's going for, and we have to have a really good plan and sell it to people and make them understand that this is what the money is going to go for, and this is how we're trying to get a handle on our own, our own issues and taking care of things here at home for you and making the city safer. So,
Anything else for Bruce? Gentleman in the back, I've heard me say this before, dumped every council member, mayor I see. The city staff has been wonderful with this, and they've just been phenomenal, going way out of their way, and above and beyond, and everybody we've dealt with, all the departments that had cooperation we've been getting, in my view, is, I don't know that I could ask for
well,
anything
and
different, so
look
thank you
at
for.
look at when you went on council, when I went on council, and the number of employees that we had for the city. And we haven't had any layoffs, but we haven't had any hires. And it's all been through attrition. Someone retires, we don't replace them. And I would, we're not asking people to do less. We have fewer people, and we're asking them to try to keep the workload at the same level. And that's asking a lot. We're asking people we're going through, we have all 3 collective bargaining units up for on the table this year, and we're asking for more from our employees. So I think overall, and it's everything isn't always the way you'd like it, but when you're trying to do 17 things and you only have time and resources to do 12, sometimes it's tough to be happy and determined sometimes, and I get that, and I appreciate all that they do. I think we have some great people in this city, and you folks are evidence of that too. I was just really happy to see the number of people that took out. I wish we could get more people to run for elective office, and that's been a problem too with our form of government. We don't even get full slates on either side sometimes. Sorry, you guys are on the ballot. I'm not trying to make things more heartburn. But you know, how do you raise your profile and talk about things when you're not running against anybody? And it's not perceived as, you know, and you know, one of the other things I look at is with this one, we've had a lot, you know, you never had replacements that we had to fill. And we've had to do that a bunch of times with people who moved on and have something else they want to get off, this, that, and the other thing. So, and that's been another dynamic that we never had before. So, lots to think about, I realize that. And it's not easy, and we really are trying to get attention from some of the legislature on some of the things. And I know that they had this, I was part of the Act 47 study commission that the state's local government commission put together. And they put together a final report. I'm not sure how some of the things that got in there. You know, and some of their recommendations and things like, you know, okay, well, they would say, well, we'll give you tax on the drink but then you have to, every year you have to try to reapply for that. I mean, that's just like, you know, all right, we're here again for you to punch us in the head. I don't know where that came from. So, and we wanted to, from our perspective, from the League of Municipalities, we really thought that pension reform and talking about binding arbitration were really significant because we see those as cost drivers in the city's budget and municipalities' budgets, and that was never even discussed, and that got pushed off. So I worry that that the people that are working for us now, that I hope that there's a pension for them when they go to retire, and I worry about that. And we are in much better shape than a lot of other cities where they might have like their firefighters' pension is only 28% funded. I mean, that's frightening. That is really frightening. And, you know, how are they going to do that? And then when you end up with situations where you have more people who are drawing from the pension than are working and paying into it. I mean, again, that gets scary too. How do you pay for that? So. Well, this is depressing. I didn't mean to bring the whole house down here, but I mean, it's just some of the things we have to deal with. If any one of you set out to figure out, how can we provide municipal, you probably wouldn't come up with the design that we have in this state. You probably wouldn't, because it's just not exactly the most efficient. It really isn't. So it was great 100 years ago, but it's not 100 years ago. So, and things have changed dramatically in the States. So, and you know, we didn't even talk about municipalities that are very affluent and have no local police force. And I always try to tell people, if you live in Altoona and Logan Township and Hollidaysburg Borough and Tyrone, you not only pay for your local police protection, but you're helping to subsidize these other municipalities who have no local police because they're relying on the state police. So, and the state has tried a couple times to come up with some kind of formula to get, you know, and it never happens. And I don't necessarily think that's fair either. You know, I like having a full-time fire department. Look at the age of our housing stock, how densely packed it is. The fact that usually in your cities you have higher buildings, but yet I know that there are fire departments around the country that they have a countywide fire department that's a mix of paid firefighters and volunteers. So I think the state needs to really take a long, hard look at how we do things in Pennsylvania. So I'll get off my soapbox.
Thank you very much. I'm glad we were able to get it here. And thanks for what you're doing with the league too. Get a phone call with Mayor Jay today. See if he's still mayor tomorrow.
Yeah, he's got a pretty. He's running against former Republican mayor in Lancaster. So,
But anyway,
I didn't even know there were any registered ladies left in Lancaster. So, but that's pretty competitive race.
yeah, right here.
So your comment earlier about difficulties of the election and budget season were, other than not wanting to be cooperative, it was more timing and scheduling issues.
Yeah, but I think there's some other people, like I thought about Tom McMahon, who was mayor of Reading for 2 terms, was former president of the Pennsylvania League of Municipalities, and Tom is no longer serving in office. Tom will be in there Reading again is a home rule charter, and they're Act 47. Some people like that Tom would probably be a good one to talk to. I mean, he certainly has a real depth of knowledge, and he's a business guy. The guy was an engineer, worked for a large firm, Reading, retired, and then ran for mayor of the city of Reading.
And one of the challenges, most of the communities that have done this conversion, it was here in the 70s or 80s, and there isn't a lot of people with experience immediately who've been under both forms. So either they know home rule and aren't really sure what the third-class city code limitations would be, or they're in the third-class city code and wouldn't necessarily know what home rule would be.
Well, and you look, I mean, there's only how many home rule communities in Pennsylvania?
Well,
There's-
it's 6 or something.
I mean, it's a small number, it's less than 100, right?
Yeah, well, it's
And yet, you've got some home rule communities, Johnstown's home rule, right, and they're in Act 47, Reading's in Act 47, so. But again, I think that may be how they've structured themselves. You know, and they have different problems, but again, it's about who can pay the bills. Reading had an increase, Reading and Allentown both had increases in population in the 2010 census, but the increase was in that demographic of people that are below the poverty line. So, you know, there's an increased demand for services, but with no offsetting ability to pay for that. So, it's I don't know how some of the folks do it. So,
I think Reading is on the next meeting,
Yes.
but not Tom McMahon. I believe it's somebody that works in the office.
I think Tom might give you an interesting perspective on. Again, he has, you know, he's out of office now and would be. His cell phone.
While you're looking at that, do we want to invite Larry to start down the road of the legal discussions? I don't know how many questions you got submitted or
Bill, I think the major question sort of revolved around Fred Reading. No, it was
Mike Foreman.
Foreman. Must have brought up a case about home rule municipalities and the tax caps. And I think Richard had a question with regard to that. And that was something, frankly, that I was not even aware of. I represent Tyrone, and I may have told the commission that before, but it's the only home rule municipality in Blair County. I think you had their manager up here, and she talked and whatnot. But in Tyrone, there is no tax cap limitation, so I really never had to worry about whether there was one. But I understand in Johnstown, I think they have a tax
Well,
cap.
and the majority of ones, I'd say 50% of the ones I read through
Right.
did have something in there, but apparently there was a case.
Right, and I think what he was talking about is a case called Muselich, something like that, from 2006. And in that case, it was a county home rule, but it's under the same kind of statutory provisions that we are here if you were to go home rule. In that case, the county's home rule charter indicated that they were capped at 25 mils for the real estate, take it, and that if they went over 5% in an increase in any 1 year, they had to get voter approval. So in 2004, the county commissioners raised the taxes from 25 mils to 29. Didn't get voter approval. That was, I guess, maybe less than 5. I haven't thought about it. But so then at the end of the next year, the county commissioners raised taxes to 44 mils, from 29 mils to 44 mils. That made some of the taxpayers mad. They never got voter approval. Never went on the ballot to do this. They took it to court, and the lower court held that the home rule statute indicates that there can be no limitation on a governing body's ability to raise taxes, even though that was in the charter. The Commonwealth went up to the Commonwealth Court. Commonwealth Court agreed. They held that the charter provision limiting a governing body with tax cap is a nullity. So that was in 2006. That's about 6 years old. So I believe that's the case he's talking about. There really isn't a lot of case law on it. There was another case from
So other municipalities that have home rule charters that have caps in them,
At least the Commonwealth Court would say it's a nullity.
if somebody actually
Yes.
challenged it. So they would have to go by that charter that was written until somebody challenged it and nullify them on a case-by-case basis. But if we were writing a charter here, you would have to advise us, or what would you advise us if we chose to put a cap?
Well, so
in
the
there?
city would not get into litigation, I'd advise no cap. Because it will eventually, according to the Commonwealth Court, would be ruled a nullity. Now, there was an appeal, it's called an aliquotter, was taken to the Supreme Court. They denied aliquotter, meaning they said they weren't going to hear that appeal. Then in a later case in 2008, they mentioned this case from 2006, a Commonwealth Court case, and they didn't, they sort of indicated that they agreed with it. It wasn't the exact case kind of thing, so it wasn't like it was an affirmation that was total, but it looked like they sort of agreed with this case. So I would think the Supreme Court would also agree with that. And given the statutory language, it's pretty clear. When you read, this is in the Home Rule statute, it says, the governing body shall not be subject to any limitation on the rates of taxation imposed upon residents. So, if you try to do it through the charter, it's a nullity. In this second case, they tried to do it by a referendum. The charter allowed referendums, the voters to come and just present a referendum. It got on the ballot for an ordinance. So these people got kind of smart and they said, we'll do an ordinance that says, we'll put it in the ballot, that limits the county commissioners, this is again a home rule municipality, it's Allegheny County, that limits their ability to raise taxes. Now it's on the ballot. And the court held, no, they couldn't do that. Because that was a limitation.
Because of the same price.
Right.
So it sounds like that would apply not just for caps, but any kind of limit on yearly increases like inflation or inflation plus.
That's
or
correct.
something like anything like that.
Right. I guess the state legislature felt that the voting booth was the place to handle that.
What also about like a ratio between an earned income tax and a property tax? Some sort of mandated distribution between those two. No tax cap, but it must be made up of this percentage of earned income versus.
Well, right. I'd have to think about that, but I would still think that's a limitation on a tax.
Because one of the things that we felt if an earned income tax was a more fair tax, for instance, or versus property tax, there'd be no mechanism in the charter to make sure that the council would eventually implement that, even though that would be another tool added to their toolbox.
Right.
Essentially.
I guess it depends on the language. I have to think about that. But I think it'd have to be very carefully crafted. As I said, Tyrone doesn't have that. Tyrone became a home rule municipality, I think, in 1984. And I believe that it wasn't until 10 years later that they actually started to tinker with their taxes. And what they did there was, and I see this, and Bruce had brought it up about, it is a revenue source. It can't be used as such. In the public, if they feel that it's just something that's going to raise taxes, they may not like that. I'm sure they wouldn't. I think that it's really a tax reform tool. Tyrone actually had its own tax reform. What they did was lower the real estate taxes on the elderly, basically, and raised it on the earned income. And if you look at what happened in Altoona last year, the Act 47 plan raised earned income taxes on residents by 0.25%. This year they're making us lower that to 0.2%. So it's what, 25.25 of 1%. That's like a quarter of a percent. That actually raised, and then on non-residents it was 0.15. That actually raised enough money for the city this year to end the year pretty much in the black. And now they're saying that we have to lower it. It'll be 0.2 on residents and 0.1 on non-residents. But if you see just that little tinkering right there, and I think because Altoona really, when we went into Act 47, wasn't like a lot of other municipalities, Reading, where they couldn't pay their bills, that, you know, the creditors were at the door. The city still had a lot of play in their budget, not, you know, a lot, but they still had enough play that they were, you know, making payments and all that sort of thing. And it just, you know, I think you just need something to keep just a little bit ahead of that, and that allowed us to do it in Act 47, from what I observed anyway. Now this year, it ought to be interesting, because we have to now reduce them this year. We have to go to court for the city next Friday, not this Friday, next Friday, to ask the court to do that for us. Because anytime you get an increase in earned income over what the state Act 511 limit is, which is 1%, that has to be court under 47, and that's what we're doing. Altoona has, by the way, earned income tax for Altoona. There are 3 different sources that we get earned income tax, or categories we get it for. One is under Act 511, that's the Local Tax Enabling Act. That says all municipalities, governs all municipalities. It says you can't get more than 1%. You can't impose more than 1% on your residents on earned income tax. And oh, by the way, if the school district in which your municipality is located has an earned income tax, if they pass a 1%, you have to split it 50-50. So that's why the city's getting 0.5% of earned income tax, because the Altoona Area School District also has it. So that's one category we get under Act 511, Local Tax Enabling Act. The second category that the city was imposing earned income tax on was it was called Act 205, or it is called Act 205, and that's for pension. When your pensions are in distress, the state allows you, if you meet certain qualifications, and that we did, to increase your earned income tax. And the city imposes 0.2% for pension purposes on earned income tax. Okay, so that gives us 0.7 between Act 511 and Act 205. The third category, which we were just permitted last year, is Act 47. We have Act 211, Act 205, and now we have Act 47. Act 47 says, okay, if you're a distressed municipality, if the court approves you raising your earned income tax above the Act 211 statutory amount of 1%, you can do it. And that's what the court did last year for us. The plan called for us to raise earned income tax under Act 47 by 0.25% on residents and by 0.15% on non-residents. Now, we go into a home rule municipality, we lose Act 47. If you're looking at getting out of Act 47 by doing a home rule, kind of government sort of thing, if we get out of Act 47, we would lose the ability to raise earned income tax on non-residents. Home rule municipalities are not permitted to impose earned income tax on non-residents that their own municipality couldn't impose. So, if I live in Logan Township and I work in the city of Altoona, I'm a non-resident, right? Under Act 205, that's the pension, you are permitted to impose earned income on non-residents and residents. And we do that. I do live in Logan, I pay 0.2% for Act 205 purposes for city pensions. I do not pay based on Act 211, which is the Local Tax Enabling Act, because Logan Township has a 5% tax, 0.5%, as does the school district, just like in Altoona. However, under Act 47, I'm a non-resident, and so I pay also the 0.15% that the city raised last year on non-residents. And so there's some good and bad about getting out of Act 47.
If we were to go to the home rule charter, would we still be governed by Act 511?
Yes, but you don't have the caps in it. And when I say governed by that, that's the subject of taxation.
Right.
We still have to follow the subject of taxation under Act 511, and that is, it clearly lists what they are.
would the school still be capped at the 0.5, and the
Yes.
city then would be uncapped
Yes.
to go above
Yes.
0.5?
As a matter of fact, in Tyrone,
They said they're 1.25 or 1.5.
I thought they said 175.
they could be.
I thought they started at 7.5 and then they went.
Oh, with the school district, I think they're over the
Yeah.
2%, I think.
And I think she definitely said that they were over 2%.
I believe that's the case. So yes, they still get their 0.5. But anything we raise above the 0.5 that we're permitted to, we do not split that with the school district.
But I guess circling around to where we started here, if this commission, there's a lot of ifs, we decided the home rule charter, recommend the home rule charter, then we decided to write it, and if this commission felt that a distribution similar to that, where a higher earned income tax and a lower real estate tax and an elimination of a lot of the nuisance taxes was the way to go, and they felt that we could get popular support for a charter with those sort of mandates written in, you would recommend what? Being that there's this
Very
potential.
carefully worded language.
It's, I don't,
Yeah.
Councilman Pauls.
you know, one of the things that would be really destructive is, because it just gets so convoluted, you start to feel like.
With the
you're
acts,
chasing
I
your
know,
tail.
I'm sorry.
No, but you know, what would really be nice is, and I'm looking at you, but is if we had, if we, they would put this in a table
Big
format
menu.
that said, okay,
If you do this.
right now, we have these sources of revenue available to us as a third-class city, and this is what we can do with it.
We're using
Under
them
Act
all.
47, it changes to this.
And we can
And,
make it two.
and then home rule, what can that do? Because I think that helps simplify, you know, if you pick your poison then.
And I've read a bunch of these, and some of them have eliminated or limited severely, you know, a lot of the nuisance taxes, basically, you know, we're gonna give you these two tolls and none of these. Now,
And I don't know how valid that would be
Yeah.
if it ever went to court.
Yeah.
And we were talking about that, and that even though we would get rid of all these nuisance taxes, and we'd like to, that's,
Yeah, because the
That's
subject of
unconstitutional
taxation,
anyway, right?
well, the subject of taxation is in Act 511, or, yeah, Act 511. And I think the governing body would have the right to impose whatever tax limit they wanted on this.
so would you find it advisable from a litigation viewpoint to even throw in
Address
the
that?
eliminate, to address the elimination of all the nuisance taxes?
I think, you know, it's certainly up to you, but I think I would leave that up to council to decide, the governing body to decide, because they may need certain things that we can't think right now that they, you know, that it would be important. But if you start limiting it, that's the idea of home rule, to have no limitations, because you go to,
although, you know, some of them with combined with the referendum abilities and the ability to change the home rule, and most of them have gone down that, and I've seen, read through one where they, you know, have put a bunch of measures in place, referendums, to try to change some of the limitations that were imposed on them. Now they just have to assume it.
I look at some of the things we collect taxes on, and then I have to look and go, wow, what's our cost to try to collect this? And then you have people say, why the heck do you guys do this? It's like, well, you know, we're the person going through the sofa cushions looking for change so we can, you know, buy a sandwich to eat, you know, and so you take what you play with the cards you're dealt with and you go with that. I mean, but I think I'll only speak for this council because those dynamics can change. But I think that we prefer to eliminate some of these ones that, again, it's just look at the cost and efficiency of trying to collect some of these things if we had another source to do that.
Good, that's the key.
Yeah.
You'd have to have that going.
Yeah, you'd have to offset that somehow.
I
You know,
that's where the
And
thrust
you
of
see
my-
what happens as he's explained things, you know, there was a proposal that we thought was getting some traction to have, you know, right now, you have additional county sales tax in Philadelphia and Allegheny County. We were looking to try to get that for other municipalities, and that looked like it was going somewhere, and then the school boards came in and said, well, we want in on the deal, and then it was just like a house of cards. It just fell apart, because once the school district, you know, again, I looked at what they're proposing with this Act 47 changes, where we have this menu of some smaller taxes, and then every year we'd have to go back and say, well, how do you like that drink tax we put on you? We think we want to do that again. I mean, that's that's, you know, you have to sell that every year. I mean, why would you want to have and then if you know that and right now with what the state's done, you know, it used to be you had so many liquor licenses in a municipality, and then they changed that so that you had portability, you can move liquor licenses. And we've actually had the ability to approve, I never thought I'd see it, we've actually passed and said we approved to allow some liquor licenses to come back into the city, which I think is a great thing, because that means that's businesses coming back in. Now they say, well, the state's going to give us the ability to put a tax on the drink, and now we're going to see them go outside because now they can do it. They can move those around. I'll go over the line and go into Logan Township because I won't have to deal with that. So, like I said, at least you have the opportunity to pick the poison maybe and decide what's best for us and what's going to be good for the community.
One of the things I'll relay is I did have a conversation today with Rick Gray, who's still the mayor of Lancaster, and they are not home rule, but he was nice enough, he's very involved in the league and very involved on a statewide basis. He pointed to Reading's problem, and I think Bruce had referenced that Reading wound up in Act 47 in home rule, but one of the big problems that I believe he was relaying was their charter was so restrictive they couldn't raise the money, and they wound up in Act 47 because it sounds like he wasn't coming out and saying it because it's not his municipality. It sounds like the charter caused some problems by being too restrictive.
I can say Tyrone, the governing body hasn't done that. I mean, they've been very conservative, I think. And if, I believe, just from representatives since probably 1994 or something like that, I think they would be in distress status and they not have the ability to tweak that. I really do.
I'm going to bounce back to earlier. You just jogged my memory. You talk about, and this has to do with Lancaster and the fact that they have a strong mayor. Remember when we were at the conference in there, and they have what they call Moose, which is the Mayor's Office of Special Events. But what it is, it's a neat thing, but it was because he's a full-time mayor, and he did this initiative, which I can't imagine unless it was your full-time gig. It's all volunteer. Because he goes out, it's actually, they have staff, and they raise money from the people, donate to that, and then when there's events going on in the community, they have a staff to help with things. Now, we don't have a convention center or major hotel in the city, but we have all these concerts and all that sort of thing. And, they have the ability and the wherewithal to try to help out with those sorts of things. But again, that's the advantage of having someone like that and that kind of leadership and raising funds from the community and being able to step it up a notch and these other communities that have made a real focus on the arts in their community, like Lancaster, like Reading, like Bethlehem, and Allentown. So I'm sorry to ping pong around like that, but just Rick Ray and the Moose made me think of that stuff. Because you were really impressed with it. I thought that was really.
Hippo wanted a moose?
Yeah. So. Yeah. So.
I have a question that maybe you might be able to answer. If we adopted a home rule charter and changed to the strong mayor form of government, would that force a special election?
If you adopted a home rule charter and adopted it.
Strong mayor form of government. I mean, obviously that would be within the next 4 years.
No, I wouldn't think that.
The transition would be after each of the it would have made any major changes to mayor or to any of the council positions, number of council, anything. They would all have to serve their term and phase out.
That's not how it worked last time.
We give a transition phase.
Yeah.
The commission can actually determine what that.
Alan McCullough only lasted 2 years. He had a 4-year term.
He became a councilman at his mayor's salary, at his full-time mayor's salary, which I think was $25,000, 26. He became a councilman, yeah, because he was elected to a 4-year term. Was like almost like a contractual thing. So he served as a councilman, and they elected Danny Miller.
Correct.
As the current mayor, should we choose to change the duties of the mayor, it would not go into effect until this term being elected tomorrow expired, even though.
Well, no, not necessarily.
There'd be a special election.
You could change it, and then I mean, there would be another election for a new mayor who would be elected to full.
You couldn't get rid of the current mayor.
He'd probably end up being a
Become a
councilman.
councilman.
Become a councilman.
Just like
But he's
previous.
elected, he still has to serve out some term, and he has to serve it at his salary.
You can't change it, it's to keep
Okay.
people from
So you can take a
taking people
kept
off.
the same
by
amount of
changing
councilmen,
salary.
they become a councilman because they're effectively a councilman anyway, and you put a new position of mayor in place.
You have
But some
$400
councilmen-
councilman and
Yeah,
several.
that's right, that's right.
It's not really a budgetary decision.
And that, by the way, is constitutional. You cannot reduce salaries in office. You can't raise them either, which is a good thing. So,
We could reduce the amount of councilmen though?
yes, you can have any number that you want. Tyrone, oddly enough, has 8. It's the only one in the whole state.
And the mayor's a
Eight.
tiebreaker.
Yeah. No, the mayor votes in every issue.
Unlike unlike other borough governments.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
because because that's probably because of the home rule, right?
It
Okay,
is.
yeah, because in borough government, the mayor only votes at his break time.
Right, but not
Your
in
council
Tyrone.
president is the one who runs the meetings and sets the agenda.
But in Tyrone, the council president is the mayor.
I see. So,
And they vote on every issue. And what's odd about that is it can be tied. If you don't break, there's no tiebreaker. It's not an odd number.
The reality is you would need 5 to pass everything.
yeah.
You couldn't pass it with 4.
Right. And but it hasn't, I maybe saw it once where there was a tie. That's it.
But ties are lost.
Well, like, I
It is,
think,
nothing gets.
but I
done.
think like, as to your point, like, I think Lancaster has 5 city councilmen. That's my understanding, yeah. But again, then your council becomes that legislative body, they're the ones that have to adopt the budget, they're the ones that ask for tax increases or that sort of thing, you know, because the mayor would say, I want to hire 5 more police officers, and we're gonna want to put that in the budget, but if the council doesn't pass it, then, that's kind of your check and balance there too, so.
And some of these even talk about the mayor having approval or veto power and then override and veto.
Right, yeah, I mean,
for
it
ordinances.
depends upon your, how you set it up, but.
Oddly enough, in Tyrone also, and this goes toward the class A measures. If we got into a third class city code, right now, it requires certain advertising certain notices that just make no sense. But in Tyrone, they really went the opposite way. They adopt an ordinance first and then advertise, which is just very odd. Usually you would think you would have notice of what you're going to do. They do it and then give notice they did it. And that home rule charter was written by the former city solicitor, Jack Katzel.
Did they hold that up to a mirror or something when they transfer? I mean,
What they did.
so you open the Tyrone Herald in the morning and go, hey, guess what we did? Wow, that's
You gotta go to the meeting.
that's a little scary.
But you can indicate in there what ordinances you would want to be advertised and which ones don't need advertised. That's a class A measure. You can do bid limitations, what contracts we bid, which ones don't. As far as an amount goes.
You regulate the manner of advertising, saying.
I believe you could. Yes. Meaning we could be everything on the web versus the paper.
Because right now, third class city code,
You have to do.
describe, tells us what.
The Sunshine Act doesn't have any limitations, it doesn't have any dictation there.
It says notice, and that's something I have to check. That's why I said I think you probably do. But it does indicate you have to give at least 24 hours notice before, and we would still be subject to the Sunshine Act. So, but that may limit us, the Sunshine Act, I'd have to look at that. Any other tax issues? The tax gets a little complicated, but just remember, there are 3 different ways, 3 different subjects or categories of earned income that the city has right now. Act 47, Act 205, and Act 511.
With the pension, though, I know there was a ill-fated effort to allow,
Yes, and I wish we would have gotten it.
we can't change that.
No.
The use of the money.
That would be nice.
That was the core challenge that was, yeah.
Well, we were trying to get some legislation to allow that money to go to healthcare for retirees, so arguing that it was a benefit.
Would have been great.
Yeah. And they just wouldn't hear it in Harrisburg. But I would just listen to you, seems pretty obvious.
Yeah, because you have certain municipal employees that, because they've never paid into Social Security, we're paying healthcare for life, because they don't take advantage of, they never become Medicare eligible because they never paid into Social Security, so we have those costs forever.
Third-class city code requires us to have certain pensions and to actually have those pensions in a way that they're, you determine the benefit, defined benefit. It doesn't matter what it costs you, this is what they have to get when they retire.
Right.
I think for new employees, we might be able to change that pension requirement.
With this, because I know that's one of the things we're trying to work with the league, is changing it for new hires.
Right, I don't see where
You know, just to get that going.
third-class city code specifically talks about what kind of pension you need. I don't see why we couldn't change that. You can't change somebody's pension once
It's in
down.
down. Right.
That's, again, constitutional. But for new hires, I believe you could. Looking for the future.
And that's something I will, let me get you.
I think that's an important point. I mean, I think that as we try, if we choose to go and recommend home rule, we're going to write a charter, and then eventually we need to get public support for this charter. That, you know, we're looking for things that can balance out this potential, revenue or what can be done as far as more tools in the toolbox as far as revenue. But is there some cost-saving measures here, not just simply raising tax caps? So we need
The advertising, the pensions,
we would need a menu of items that would be advantages beyond just allowing the revenue that will allow you to cut some costs where there's some restrictions by third-class city code. And then obviously, one of the big reasons a lot of municipalities go to is go to the commissioner, city manager form of government. We already have that. So that takes one of the big driving factors, I guess, in the past.
the efficiency.
Yeah, the efficiency that comes out of that form of government, we already have that, so other than maybe tweaking the mayor powers, there isn't a lot of things on form of government left because we're going to the Austin plan, which is kind of a halfway step to the.
So they're excellent points now. Who would generate that list?
Well, that's why we're trying to tap our experts and.
Which list do you want?
Of what the available
List
cost
of
saving
benefits? In other words, what taxes could be
Oh, I
increased
can
or
do
what
that. I can do
efficiency?
that.
You can do that?
Yeah.
And I can get you a copy of our proposal from the League of Municipalities, the changes we want to see with regard to pension.
Would somebody at the league have the ability to give us advice or seeking what is worth?
I mean, one of the things that would be helpful is if you almost could go section, not line by line, section by section in the third-class city code and say, okay, here's some things in the third-class city code that are costing us money. They aren't necessarily things we would have to do. Which sections identify which sections, or who would be best to sort of look at that code and break it down for us of,
I'm even thinking like John Brenner, who used to be mayor of New York, is now, he's now the deputy director of the league. And I mean, he worked in state government before that on the local government commission, so I mean, there's someone that has a real wealth of experience.
because what we learned in third-class city code is the third-class city code is very clear, here's what it reads. But when you strip that away, what level of state or federal regulations do you fall to as the next level that's going to catch you, and and what efficiency can be gained between those two, or what things completely fall away, and we have to write into the charter to make sure something does or doesn't happen. So sort of when we really get into the nitty-gritty here, that's sort of the question going forward.
Laws of general application still apply. Sunshine Act, the Ethics Act, those types of laws still apply.
I think what we could put together though, that type of menu of, under this condition, these are the revenue sources. And then we could even cross-reference that and show you the amount of revenue we're getting now under those, which would be like, really helpful.
lottery or.
Because it's one thing to say, boy, we should get rid of this tax, but then if you look and say, well, that's a pretty substantial source of revenue, then you don't want to,
One of the documents that we got in the very first meeting was benefits or advantages. Did you write that document? Okay, well, that gave a precursor as to what the benefit of home rule might be. And I'm thinking that's good narrative, but now what specifically during the study phase, what have we seized upon that is clearly a benefit to going home rule? 1, 2, 3, or what are the drawbacks, costs and benefits? And I don't know whether you're to do that. I don't know who to ask, but it's like during our study phase, this would be one of the things that we could rely upon, is that type of objective assessment.
Well, I can certainly try to add some meat to the things.
but that might be a better thing, rather than putting you on the spot. Because that might put you is looking at his document and having someone from the league expand on those points. From the League of Municipalities, taking his document and saying, here's the benefits. This is what, and I think that they would have that kind of expertise, rather than put our esteemed legal counsel.
And that's kind of what we were talking about earlier, is that some of the people that we've interviewed either are under third-class city code, all of the departments and everyone from the city, that we, and they, since we've started down this process, they've done what studying they can, but you still don't know what home rule means if you've lived forever under third-class city code. That's what you try to operate under. And a lot of the municipalities that we've talked to have been under home rule so long that they don't really remember what the restrictions would have been.
What the changes, what did we change? What did we have before we went to this?
Yeah, so trying to find an expert who can really compare and contrast the various aspects of third-class city code and then putting it in real dollar sense as far as the city circumstances is one of the challenges going forward.
I think we could put something together from the league, and even if we, again, brought, someone like Peter Marshall back in, who is retired, does a lot of consulting work now, but he's a former municipal manager. He was former borough manager in State College before Tom Fontaine, and has,
Bruce, what is the league?
Formerly the Pennsylvania League of Cities, now the Pennsylvania League of Municipalities. It is our statewide association that we belong to.
City of Altoona belongs
Yes.
to.
Yeah.
Thanks to Bruce.
So, and we, I think we've really benefited from that relationship.
So
and that
they're
kind of
like
sharing.
a support group that has access to one.
Well,
Drowning each other's sorrows.
I mean, I'm not
we're not as
saying
broken
there's
as
anything
you,
wrong
but
with that.
that's,
You seem to have a lot of friends there.
well, but it's our, I don't want to say trade association, but I mean, it's our
Okay,
professional
well, that's a
association.
good word for it.
And I mean, through that, we work on developing legislation. I mean, there's a real thought sharing of ideas and best practices and best concepts, and that's been a real help to us.
During the last transition, I believe we had the services of a young lady by the name of Amy that was part of the city at one time and belonged to the League of Cities. And she came in and advised us several times during the transition, and she was with the League of Cities at that time.
I'm sure we can tap into that, but I mean, we changed the league changed its name because frankly, it originally started as an association of the third-class cities, because the feeling was Pittsburgh and Philadelphia were big enough that they could do their own thing, but then they joined into the league, and basically we represent full-service municipalities, and by full service, municipalities that have a full-time police department, full-time fire department, and those types of things, which are now, there's a lot of townships, there's a lot of boroughs that have that. So we felt that they changed the name to be more reflective of that, because if you are offering those types of full-time services, you've got the same issues and problems that we do by and large. I mean, Chambersburg Borough is the most recent victim of a binding arbitration ruling that they're going to end up having to raise property taxes, 42%, because of the Villanova, Pennsylvania, and those people have to figure out a way to pay for that, and they're stuck with that. And and that's one of the reasons why the league is looking to try to make some changes to Act 111, binding arbitration. just not a level playing field right now.
So you can get us connected to the
Yep.
resources of that group?
Yep. Yep.
Other questions for either guest? Thanks, I think Bruce and I both made comments that the city is sort of suffering in terms of its mayor being able to be competitive. I will tell you that the city does not suffer because our solicitor is extremely competitive. We're in good hands.
Yeah.
Don't let that show up in a commercial.
Yeah, you too.
One thing.
Wow.
Their
But
mutual
it's
support group
sincere,
there.
yeah. It's sincere.
Dave, it's so painful to watch you sit in a chair. I mean, it really is. You are just so antsy.
Part of my body really hurts right now.
It's not share what's
Not my thing.
Schedule-wise, our goal was to have a vote by the end of December. We have, by my count, 3 meetings if we keep to that. I guess the question I would have is, do we want the 3 meetings? Do we want more? Do we need all 3? Or are we still hopeful we'll be in a position to make a vote in that same timeline?
Well, I think personally that we're at a point now, if we had another meeting with guests again, that, we've pretty well heard it all, at least I think we have, from solicitors, from managers, from Mr. Foreman, and I think most everyone in this room has already kind of made a reasonable decision in their head which way they want to go. We're pretty close, Wayne. I really think we are. I think that we're well within the constraints of that 3 meetings to make a decision.
Linda, do you have any scheduled people committed at this
City of
point?
Reading, November 19th.
The whole city.
Yeah.
I have to move the meeting location.
It's just teleconference with a different telephone.
And someone just sent me Tom McMahon's cell phone
Okay.
number, so I'll give that.
Mayor Pulaski had indicated he would be potentially available on the 2nd.
He's gonna bring the motor home. Did you know he's running for governor, and he's taking the motor home around the state, so.
We have room for parking.
So, Mr. Chairperson, do you have a recommendation in mind for the next couple meetings? You
Well,
mentioned, do we need all 3?
I'm wondering, I'm throwing out, we seem to have some folks coming in. I think Bruce has given us a couple good suggestions tonight. So between the meeting on the 19th and then the meeting on the 2nd, I guess my question is, if we hear all that, would we be able to vote on the 2nd? And I guess assuming Pulaski come in and scare us all or something, then we have to change our minds.
You're gonna be amazed by this guy.
Oh, my conversation with him on the phone was pretty fun, so I think that'll be good, but.
Well, you have to
And he's
remember,
coming
Ed's
from
a good guy. Ed is a good
We
guy.
gotta confirm it. That was his target.
Ed's from Chicago. He came to Allentown to head their housing authority. And I like Ed. But he doesn't pull any punches, and he just tells you what's on his mind, and he's running for governor on the Democratic side.
So would our last meeting be on the 17th of December? Is that what the projection here is?
Yeah, we have November 19th, December 2nd, and then the
What I'm
17th.
saying, it's possible we could vote on the 2nd instead, and then be done and start organizing. And part of our task then, in my humble opinion, for the next 2 meetings, not as a precursor to where we're going, but at some point if we go and proceed with home rule, we need a planning meeting for that. So,
Well, yeah, our advertisements run out the 17th, so I know it's a minor issue, but we would have to set a schedule going forward, depending on the outcome of the vote. Well, at even regardless, we'd have to, even if the vote was no, we'd have to write a final report. Plan
So-
out the
I guess I'm hoping we're in a position to vote on the second, as opposed to the 17th, if at all possible.
I would concur with that. Are you suggesting that we might need the December 17th meeting though for administrative purposes? Richard?
I'm not suggesting, I'm just saying that we would either
We'll need to do it.
need to do it, or at least at the second, we would have to say when our next meeting would be to organize and pick that up, depending on the outcome of the vote, really, it would matter.
So we need to be prepared to have thought that through if we're in that direction on the second to,
Whether to meet next year or not.
well, yeah, but if we meet next
Well,
year.
we're next
just
year to
hammer
close
out
down,
what
or
we're gonna do.
write a charter,
Right,
is the
yeah,
question.
That's the question.
How much work do you wanna do?
So we have the 19th a definite, we have people to talk to on the 19th. The second, do we have anybody to talk to?
Probable, yeah, we're
Okay,
kind of there.
and then at that time, we would.
We might be filling in one or two of these folks that Bruce has mentioned tonight.
Okay,
I think
yeah,
that
yeah.
frankly would be good.
And tell me what you're thinking the voting process is. We just kind of say, okay, now we studied it. Somebody makes a
Closed
motion,
ballot,
is it
open
like?
ballot, what are you thinking?
Nothing closed in this room.
Is there anything, is there anything that we have guidelines on the vote, under our obligations under the commission?
Just has to be, you mean how it's taken, or?
Yeah, the process.
It would just be, somebody have to make a motion.
Okay, motion second, discussion vote.
Is it an open ballot?
Absolutely.
That's,
Well, even if it is closed, I think what you should do is indicate who voted for what on the paper to the public. You can have a
Yeah.
closed ballot, until.
right, gotcha, okay.
Yeah, because I think either on the final report
Tally.
or the ratification, it sort of says which members did what.
Yeah, during your tally, yeah.
It would be part of the final record as well.
And I mean, there is also, well, I don't know, maybe this is reaching, but part of the bigger issues with this, with the home rule is also the position of the mayor, what that position really means. Whether it's a minor or
That's
a
why you write
or
charter.
somewhere in the middle. Well, right, but do we want to have any kind of indication as to which direction we're heading?
Well, it's just another charter issue.
I think, as I see it, there'll be, from reading through here, there's maybe 15 major subjects of debate, that being one of the 15.
And I think, this guy is all over this. There's no question, he's extremely well informed of it. There's probably, 2/3 or half of it is boilerplate. And when he's saying there's 15 issues, my only dispute on that is, you're gonna have 3 or 4 big issues, and a dozen, there'll be a little bit of debate back and forth and a decision made, I suspect, and a lot of it'll be, yeah, we need to do that, put that in there, the boilerplate.
So we're working toward the 2nd of December for the final interview and a vote at the sometime during the week.
I would hope.
I'm okay with it.
I'm good with that.
I'm okay.
Does anyone see a reason we can't do that?
And then we still meet on the 17th because we advertised it and.
We don't have
We need to re-advertise at some point leading into the next year, so if we can cancel it if we so choose,
Well, I
and
think-
pick up after the first of the year, just because we have to advertise into the first of the year regardless.
But no matter what the vote is on the second, we still have more work to do, whether it's coming up with a final report or whether it's figuring out moving forward, writing a charter. So the 17th is, actually, we can still do work on the 17th, one way or the other.
Well, let's shoot for voting on the 2nd, and then as part of that, try and work out the housekeeping for whatever direction we go. If I would just ask if you coordinate with Linda so we don't have people fall all over each
In the
other.
19th,
And
from the
balance.
sounds of the agenda, the 19th would be a better, have 2 speakers on the 19th versus having a speaker and a vote on the second.
I agree.
But I don't think it's possible, I'm not sure the vote's going to take long. Unless we're going to deliberate first, I guess.
Well, there's 7 of us, and what's it require?
Four?
Simple majority?
I think all 7 would be 2 votes though, something like that, so. I don't think you can have a majority of people present, it has to be a majority of the members that are elected to the commission.
Well, you would need, if only 4 people were here, all 4 would have to vote yes or no.
Correct.
Right.
Majority of the members, not majority of the present members.
Any other discussion on that subject then? Great. Any additional public comment?
Just for clarification, Mr. Chairman, it says a quorum is a majority of the members of the commission shall constitute a quorum for the transaction of business, but no recommendation of the commission shall have any legal effect unless adopted by a majority of the whole number of members of the commission.
So it's up council.
Yeah.
And if we have people missing from the council, we still have to have full votes. Not a majority of those
Right,
present.
right.
At this point, it sounds like everybody's planning on being here on the second, right? You said you won't be here next time, right? So it doesn't sound like anybody at this point is aware of any reason or not.
That, with a vote like that, it would be good if you had everybody.
Or is it possible, well, if we're all gonna be here, as you say, you can call in, right?
Yes, you can.
Conference call to vote if you had to. If we're all here.
Excellent. Then, if there is no public comment, I didn't hear any.
Sorry. Elmore called today and asked if you could come up with a number, what you guys need for next year, just so he can put it in. I'll take it out of contingency and put it into an actual number.
Well, I guess that is a
Can
question.
you mention?
Yeah, it's about that
25,000.
That's what I thought, but I just
Yeah.
wanted to hear that again.
Because we discussed it at the council meeting, that's what I came up
Exactly
with
what we
there.
said.
And I'm assuming, however, though,
Yeah, Larry's recommendation on what would, or have you looked into, what would our advertising requirements be? I've read a lot of, even the DCD guide on advertising mentions a lot of different communities and how they've done it. We write it,
if we draft the charter.
if we draft a charter, you know, some have mentioned the sending an actual draft of the charter to every household, which are ridiculous. Yeah, posting online, having available for copies to pick up.
Drive around here and deliver. Like the out to the beer.
Yeah, having a certain number of copies on hand in the library and city hall for people to pick up. Yeah, we post online, which would obviously be the
Do
best.
the fire stations on that too, because they're in your neighborhoods, when they have.
Well, they also mentioned taking out like a full-page article or full-page in the local paper, but you can only put a synopsis in there. You're not going to be able to get the whole document there. So, to what degree it needs to be advertised and how that's accomplished from a legal standpoint is where it's driven.
I think it's more of an educational issue. I don't know that the advertisement requirements of the statute would be that onerous, but I think your educational process is.
Yeah, well,
gonna
that's
be very
different. And what we,
And who's gonna help us develop the educational material that would be focused enough to deliver the
Oh.
message?
it's all part of the budget. If we can't do it ourselves, we're going to hire an ad agency.
Wow.
They'll already left, won't show up.
Well, I think that's us. I think that's us.
We come up with the campaign.
Well, and then the
Yeah,
question
you're
becomes,
gonna be a speaker everywhere.
not just that, David, but I think, we have to rely on, we haven't done it yet, but we haven't reached out to Penn State to see if, I guess we have, I take that back, you got some advice.
Yeah, we got stakeholder analysis and everything.
But we might be able to tap into that resource to give us some help on that front.
Yeah, I think we might need some help with just regular people who could identify what the message should be, almost like a focus group. Because, I've been in all these meetings and I don't mind telling you, I'm confused. And it's not real clear to me.
And we do have the ability to have additional, no meetings, but public hearings.
Yeah.
Which may or may not get feedback. Luckily, the things are being scheduling all the people in. I mean,
Oh, okay.
we've met our obligation.
We
to have
haven't
our
voted
public
yet,
hearings,
so
we don't necessarily.
we may not have to deliver a message.
No, and I think that would be one of my concerns, that if we choose to go that direction, that, you know, none of us want to waste the next year of our life writing a charter that can't be
Yeah.
approved and won't be approved.
Yeah.
So there's a commitment, if you're gonna put the time into it, that we all
How would
presumably sell it, unless there's some dissenters among us. There's potential that you get 4 and 3 people not be happy with it, and 3 people working
Well, I
against it.
think in a group like this, even those that vote against it, if they remain on the commission, will be
Yeah.
Well, the other element of this then is the solicitor.
You weren't pointing to him because of the advertising, you were pointing to him because of who's gonna tell us what to do.
I was just looking, and I'll look at this in more detail, but I don't see where there's a advertisement requirement for the charter.
Let me see if it,
That's what I was saying, I thought.
I know it's in this guide, but I don't know if
If
it
it's a
references the
requirement.
statute.
I don't see,
I will check.
I mean, anyone who's going to see or go online and see where we're advertising it online and actually read it, they're gonna be knowledgeable about this. They're not who we're talking about. You know, if we put copies on the firewalls that you talked about, that sounds great, or the senior center. Anyone who would actually take the effort to go down and take a look at the copy of the firewall, again, that's not what we're reaching out. We're reaching out to people who, they're never gonna know that they're advertising. You know, I mean, they're,
Nothing's in reaching out to people who are going to be voting.
Voting, yeah.
well, I know, and I am being stereotypical, of course, but I think we're trying to reach out to people who just don't know about it.
The people that vote, wouldn't you think they are the ones that would go and
Find it,
possibly pick up
search
the
it out.
charter and search it out and know that it's coming to a vote?
You know, I don't know about that, actually.
I'm not sure they would.
No.
I think voters expect a message being delivered to them.
And frankly, if you look at what unless we do an amazing job and get this on the ballot by next fall, when we have a big voter turnout, it's gonna be slated for an ultra low turnout, election. And the people who voted that time, stereotypically are gonna be folks who don't have internet connections. So,
Well, I would look at it this way, though.
what?
You say next fall will be light.
No,
he's saying
I'm
we
saying,
missed next
I'm saying
fall.
that it's, I mean,
We're on
it's-
schedule for
yeah,
May of 15.
right, so we would have to do some really backbreaking work to get it on the ballot for next fall.
I don't
when
see,
there's a
I
big
don't see a
election.
real conceivable way to make that happen, only because
There's timing requirements of far in advance has to be on there. We won't.
Right, which means
we couldn't get it
it's,
done and properly
Sold.
sold.
right. I know, which means that it puts it in a bad election cycle.
But
Which maybe is a good
in terms
election
of
cycle, I
people
don't know.
being, both parties on a national level have national platforms. We learn all about it, candidates have, a lot of people vote for candidates and political parties without reading the whole platform. There's gotta be a way to get the message out, short of saying, hey, here's our really interesting, 75-page charter we'd like you to read.
So,
There's a challenge.
Or even 30-page charter.
Yeah, just get both parties
But
to
there has to
support
be,
it.
there has to be a message
This is nothing.
element to this.
Dave can have copies if you want a medical, but they just be able to sit down and read it, they'll have to read it standing up.
You could work them as they come in and out the front door.
That's a lot of foot traffic should be there.
I think that's,
Yeah.
just for information, there's a lot of requirements.
just have a stroll across the,
Segregate
high school,
everybody, if you're a city
Well,
resident,
then
you
you
need
can
to be in this waiting area.
Before the internet.
Yeah.
It's very viable option.
Yeah, it doesn't even mention.
No, he doesn't mention what at all. I mean, you can tell
Well,
that.
in terms of, I think another big cost item, however, is we're gonna benefit greatly by having learned legal counsel advising us on certainly the major elements of this. So we're gonna be putting a lot on a solicitor.
Is he learning?
He's as learned as they
Learned
get.
solicitor.
And so the question is, you'll have to have a conversation with council on how that's gonna be handled. And I don't know that that's part of our calculation on our budget right now. So.
Okay.
For instance, if we try to put a recall act into ours, because we copied it out of somebody else's.
You guys are really
Ditch
worried
that.
about that, aren't you?
Ditch the
Everybody has
Well, no,
long
it's-
memories.
I think
of
it's
this
really
stuff.
important to have him sitting here on a lot of these major issues. It doesn't necessarily need to be every meeting.
No, it's gonna be,
But it would have
here's
to
a
be-
draft, you know.
So does that get Omar what he's looking for? You're saying that they need to work through council to get his part of it. What about the advertising part? Can you figure that out?
That's what I think the number was coming from. I just wanted to be clear, if we were landing that number, in my view, it was hoping that the solicitor issues would be absorbed as well. Anything else? Fantastic. Then I guess we'll adjourn.